If everyone would please take your seats, we're going to get started with our meeting. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. It is 6:00 p.m. on Tuesday, January the 28th, 2025. I'd like to call the meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. I'd also like to welcome those of you that are here present in our City Council chambers, as well as our listening audience at WCBU. Also, I'd like to welcome our audience watching via cable channel 22. Madam Clerk, the council mics are open. Please call the roll.
Mayor Ali,
Present.
Councilmember Allen,
Present.
Councilmember Sear,
Here.
Councilmember Gordon Young,
Present.
Councilmember Graham,
Here.
Councilmember Jackson,
Here.
Councilmember Kelly,
Here.
Councilmember Euler,
Here.
Councilmember Riggenbach, Councilmember Velpula, and Councilmember Vespa.
Here.
We have a quorum present, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Please join me and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk?
We are at the approval of the minutes.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the joint city council and town board meeting held January 14th, 2025 as printed.
Seconded by Councilmember Gordon Young. Any questions or comments? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at the consent agenda. 25-12 is a communication with a request to approve and authorize the city manager to execute the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Peoria and the 4 labor unions, Teamsters Local 627, Laborers Local 165, Carpenters Local 237, and Painters Local 157, that compromise the multi-union agreement to cover the period from December 1, 2024 through November 30th, 2028. 25-13 is a communication with a request to approve and authorize the city manager to execute the collective bargaining agreement between the City of Peoria and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 51, to cover the period from December 1, 2024 through November 30th, 2028. 25-14 is a communication with request to approve an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Peoria and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. And on your desk, there is in yellow a handout with an updated communication and agreement. 25-15 is a communication with request to approve an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Peoria and Greater Peoria Sanitary District for cleaning and inspection of selected city sewer segments in the low bid amount of $161,830 and an additional authorization of $16,183 for contingencies for a total amount of $178,013. 25-16 25-16 is a communication with request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to approve a resolution approving the Kona Breeze subdivision preliminary plat with waivers for the property generally located west of Radnor Road and north of Alta Lane, having the parcel identification number of 0825-300-039. 25-17 is a communication with request to approve a resolution regarding the approval of closed session minutes. 25-18 is a communication with a request for the following. A, adopt an ordinance amending Chapter 18, Article 14, Section 18-631, existing tobacco retail licenses for the city's municipal code. And B, concur with the recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance approving a special use in a Class B1 Central Business District for a Class 2 tobacco or alternative nicotine product sales use for the property located at 814 North William Kumpf Boulevard. 25-19 is a communication with a request to adopt an ordinance vacating a 178 feet by 16 feet portion of an alley within Block 4 of Voris Fields Addition, located northwest of, but not including, the main alley running parallel and perpendicular to Maple Street, generally bounded by Maple Street, Jefferson Avenue, Persimmon Street, and Adams Street, and is adjacent to parcel identification numbers 18-09-354-005 and 18-09-354-006 in Peoria, Illinois. 25-20 is a communication from the City Manager and Community Development Director with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff for the following. A, adopt an ordinance rezoning property from a Class CG General Commercial District in a Class N1 Institutional District for the property located at 400 St. Mark's Court, and to rezone property from a Class CN Neighborhood Commercial District to a Class N1 Institutional District for a portion of the property located at 815 Northeast Glen Oak Avenue and 833 Northeast Glen Oak Avenue. And B, adopt an ordinance amending the official development plan for a medical center and associated uses ordinance 13-153 as amended in a Class N1 institutional district to add property to the official development plan boundary for the property located at 400 St. Mark's Court, part of 815 Northeast Glen Oak Avenue, and part of 833 Northeast Glen Oak Avenue to update the campus sign plan and to update the site plan and parking counts in a Class N1 institutional district for the property commonly known as St. Francis Medical Center, located at 507 East Armstrong Avenue, 703 Northwest Bryan Street, 510 and 519 Northeast Glendale Avenue, 420, 504, 515, 530, 801, 810, 815, and 833 Northeast Glen Oak Avenue, 1310 and 1315 North Missouri Avenue, 401, 445, and 400 Northeast Greenleaf Street, 304 East Illinois Avenue, 1344 North Knoxville Avenue, 200 East Pennsylvania Avenue, 800 and 908 Wayne Street, 403 and 405 Northeast Perry Avenue, 400 and 416 St. Mark's Court, and parcel identification numbers 18-04-406-021, 18-04-403-014, and 18-04-260-022, Peoria, Illinois. 25-21 is a communication with a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance rezoning property from the Class R3 Single Family Residential District to a Class C1 General Commercial District for the properties located at 3026 North Gale Avenue and 1920 West Forest Hill Avenue, Peoria, Illinois. And 25-022 is a communication with a request to defer to March 11th, 2025, an ordinance amending the existing special use ordinance number 14654 as amended in a Class R4 single-family residential district to remove properties located at 2925, 3003, 3010, and 3027 North 12 Oaks Drive from the boundary of the special use for elderly housing for properties located at 3026 North Parish Avenue, 2902, 2925, 3003, 3004, 3006, 3008, 3009, 3010, 3015, 3019, 3020, 3021, 3022, 3024, 3027 North 12 Oaks Drive, and 1010 West Forest Hill Avenue, Peoria, Illinois. And that concludes our consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any items to remove from consent? Can I get a motion to approve? Moved by Councilmember Euler, seconded by Councilmember Seer. Any questions or comments? Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are on to first readings. 25-23 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Public Works with a request to receive and file a first reading of an ordinance to approve updates in Chapter 9.5, Section 19-142, and Chapter 31 of the Code of the City of Peoria to improve stormwater management policies and procedures.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to turn the floor over to our Public Works Director, who looks like he's getting his documentation in order, so I'll turn it over to Director Powers.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Manager, Council. It is a very large document. However, it is, I would say, cleanup. Primarily, it is in the area of tables and defining new industry standards relative to what's required for retention in new developments. This is not in any way affecting rates for anyone that has existing rates. It's not going to affect rates, quite frankly, in any way at all, unless there were to be a new development that would, say, have a greater impact of drainage and may have to retain more water. That's the substantive changes that are within the tables. A lot of science in that. If we go too much deeper into that, frankly, it would be a report that we would come back to you and provide the actual data. But again, as a very brief overview, it is just new industry standards that's going to affect more so new development and retention values in that regard. No rate changes, so we're good there. Beyond that is cleanup language and definitions, making some of the definitions toward penalties more clear, meaning verbiage, not changing the penalty, changing the definition, so it's better defined. And in essence, that's it. I will stand by for questions.
Councilmember Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director Powers. Just one question. If and when this ordinance is passed, would it be used against pending business? Like development right now, I have a couple of development right now in the 5th District.
Well,
Would these new rules be applied to
sorry.
pending business?
Okay, I want to make sure I heard you. When you say pending, you mean existing?
Correct, yes.
It would not. This would affect new development. So let's say a development was being contemplated for future development, and we got the computations relative to what the requirements would be relative to impervious surface and what retention requirements would be. We would apply the new industry standards toward that development. It will not affect any existing. That is my understanding.
Okay, my question is pending, though. Well, I understand not existing, but pending business.
Pending review, I would say yes, because they would, if you pass it, we would put this into effect on passage of the second reading. Is that correct? I would have to defer to council. It would be after the date, I believe, of second reading and adoption, with the adoption date. But I would defer to Corporation Council in that regard, as far as the effective date.
Corporation Counsel?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know there's been some discussion about some of these adjustments with one of the subdivisions that's been undergoing a substantial review. That's Gray Oak. If that's a basis for your question, they're
Yes, sir.
aware of these how those will affect their, how they'll affect the pending review of their materials. We're providing comments based on these new tables. There is a table involved that impacts that marginally, and they're aware of it, and I think that that's the only issue. But I'll confirm that before we have it up for final passage next.
Yeah, I'd love to have a confirmation
Yes,
which table we'll be using for that business.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Director.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to move to receive and file, please.
Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Any other questions or comments? Please cast your ballots. Thank you, Director Powers.
Thank you, Mayor.
Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We are at regular business. 25-24 is a communication from the City Manager and Director of Human Resources with a request to adopt an ordinance approving the City of Peoria paid parental leave policy.
Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to ask our Human Resources Director, Ed Hopkins, to come forward and walk through this proposed policy change.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. We are asking for your consideration of this ordinance for a paid parental leave policy for our city employees, a policy that reflects our commitment to creating a supportive and inclusive work environment. This proposed policy offers up 2 weeks of paid leave for eligible employees following the birth, adoption, or foster placement of a child. It applies equally to birthing and non-birthing parents, adoptive parents, and foster parents, recognizing the diverse journeys to parenthood. This policy benefits parents by reducing stress and promoting mental health, helping to prevent postpartum depression and offering essential bonding time for both parents. It also gives mothers time to recover and supports a healthy work-life balance for all employees. For the city, the benefits are just as clear. Offering a paid parental leave helps attract top talent, decreases employee turnover, and contributes positively to our image as an employer. It fosters inclusivity and gender equality, demonstrating that the City of Peoria is a modern and forward-thinking employer. I also want to highlight that this policy is budget neutral within the spending plan already approved by the City Council. By providing this benefit, we affirm that the City of Peoria values family and is committed to supporting employees at every stage of their lives. We respectfully ask for your approval of this policy, which aligns with the city's values and strengthens our position as an employer of choice in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, and congratulations on your new promotion.
Thank you,
To the
Mayor.
Director
Appreciate it.
position. Yes. This is well done. Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Director, and congratulations again. Thank you to everyone who works on this. I think that this is a great step in the right direction for our employees when you're getting ready to either have a child naturally or adoption or whatever your method into becoming a parent is. The last thing you should have to worry about is affordability at that standpoint. And so as an employer, if we can be there and to support our employees to ensure when they become that parent, they have the resources they need necessarily. So again, thank you all for bringing this forward, and I look forward to supporting it tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councilman Allen. I agree 100% with your words. I'm not going to repeat them, but as a parent, I think this we've used this when my late wife was, when we got our 2 girls. So I'm 100% behind this, and I'd like to move to approve this new ordinance.
Did you just move to approve?
Yes.
Seconded by Councilmember Allen. Continued discussion, Councilmember Gordon Young?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to echo those same sentiments, and really, I want to just show appreciation for this level of engagement, insight. But, some time ago, I asked that things that are brought to us, to the council, be aligned with how it fits into the strategic plan. And so as you were talking, I looked back and to reflect and see, like, where is this fitting? And it says embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm like, quality of life as well, right? And so there's a bunch of ways that, a few ways that this fits into our strategic plan. And it brings us up to date to 2025, right? And again, just want to thank you all for the work that you've done. I think this is monumental. And I am not in the childbearing stage of life, but certainly can appreciate those who deserve this and need this level of appreciation and care and support. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome, and I'll say ditto, ditto, and ditto. Also, budget neutral sounds really good. Thank you. We have a motion to approve with a second. No more comments or questions. Please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Director Hopkins.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
If we don't have any unfinished business, we would be on to new business.
Okay. New business, first item I would like to bring up is the potential impact of the federal funding pause that has now been temporarily blocked, I understand. But Mr. Manager, if you would review with us the potential impact for the city of Peoria.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, the situation that we're seeing in Washington with the request of the Trump administration to freeze all spending at this point in time and grants at this point in time has changed somewhat during the course of the day. There was a judge that came in and basically put a hold on that until February 3rd. But we did ask our finance director to go through and identify what potential impacts we might see. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Director Craddy to walk through the sheet that everyone should have on their desk in front of them that talks about both direct grants and pass-through grants that we receive from the state or from other agencies.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. As the manager stated, at your desk is the handout that breaks down the grants that would be subject to this freeze. Staff did take the time to review obviously the grants that we've been awarded and compare that to the documentation that was provided to the federal agencies that the Trump administration wanted report backs on these specific grants. All of these grants were included in that request. In terms of the direct federal grants, the city's current exposure is a little bit over $15.1 million. That is really the amount remaining on federal awards that we've received. So some of these grants we may have already received some drawdown funds on, things like CDBG funds, home funds, ESG funds. We already have had drawdowns. Within this, I will state, this does not include anticipated CDBG, home, or ESG funds that usually get awarded around August. That would be about an additional $3 million on top of the $15 million. So that's on top of those numbers, but those have not been awarded at this point. We also have the federal pass-through dollars. So those are federal dollars that are provided to the state of Illinois that then are awarded via state agencies. That number is at $17.8 million. I will say that there is some fluctuation in that number, and I'll draw specific attention to the IEPA Clean Water Mitigation Program. The low-interest loan program that we use through the Illinois EPA for a lot of our CSO work is partially federally funded. It fluctuates a little bit in terms of what that federal reimbursement is versus state reimbursement, so it's hard for us to give a dedicated number. But I think the key talking point and discussion with this is obviously this affects existing draws that we already have undertaken. It would also potentially impact future draws that we would need to take on this low interest loan program if this were to stay in place. In totality, we're looking at about $32.9 million in funds that are at risk because of this order from the Trump administration. Obviously, as we stated, there is currently a stay on this till Monday. We'll continue to monitor what that looks like and anything that comes through from it. The only thing I will kind of state with this is looking at the raw information. Obviously, this came down today. We're kind of going through and trying to get as much information as we can. There are potentially dollars that we have already spent but have not been reimbursed. or contractual obligations that we have that we need to kind of go through all of these individually, look at the contracts, look at the individual pieces, to really look at what our exposure would be if the money went away. And so that's a process that's going to take us a little bit more than really 8 hours to go through. So as we kind of get through this process and we go through this, we'll have more information on what that risk exposure of funds we've already have spent would look like. But this is kind of the totality of what the number looks like. We've had a number of good years in terms of getting federal dollars. And so we have a very high exposure to a potential loss on things that I think directly impact the residents of the city of Peoria.
Thank you, Director Craddy. Thank you, Mr. Manager. I do have a few questions, and the first relates to the amount of funding that has been expended, but we haven't requested a drawdown. So do you know those amounts? And I think there's a sense of urgency. I'm not asking you to tell me those amounts, okay? But I think that there is a sense of urgency between now and, over the weekend, that any money that has been spent, that we draw down while we can.
Yeah, after this day, I've had some conversations with some of the staff to take a look at that, to make sure we are able to put some of that in. I will say, in some of our home funds, at about 4:15 this afternoon, about 10 minutes after the stay occurred, my staff put in a $25,000 request for some home funds that was accepted. So we are looking at that to try to get this done before the stay stops on Monday.
I did notice, Mr. Manager, on the FRA Corridor ID grant that we still have a remaining $412,700 when it was just a $500,000 grant. Why do we have so much left?
I think it's just the timing of the billings that have been coming in and us processing that to come out and then get the reimbursements back. So we'll work on that as well this week.
Okay, so I think in that case, in other cases, if our consultants or contractors have not invoiced us, let's get them in and let's draw down the funding while we can. I did hear from the governor's office today. There was several meetings that the governor's office held with mayors across the state, about 20 at a time, different meetings. They met with school leaders and others within government, basically to document your experience. If you're having technical problems drawing down, it'll document your experience. What is the impact that is happening to your community as a result? Document that experience. I also heard from Senator Durbin's office today, and really it's the same message, is to document the impact that your community is experiencing so that we understand, so that we can clearly, and the senator can clearly understand the impact. And as it relates, I'm looking at, for example, Firefighter Safer Grant. And we know that that was for 14 firefighters. Does that mean that, how does that impact our ability to, if this happens, how does that impact our ability to continue to pay our employees?
I would say at that point, it would be a discussion with council. We would have to use general fund dollars to cover those costs going forward if for some reason these grant dollars are not reinstated.
Would that be something that we would have time to work on? Would we need an emergency meeting, Mr. Manager, or could we continue to operate?
No,
and pay?
I think we can continue to operate. The question, what's going to happen, the reality is we don't have that federal revenue coming in. We have the expense already budgeted. So the cost is there. So, or the expense is there. It just means we would be drawing that out of the general fund, and our fund balance would accelerate down, lower and lower, faster and faster. So I think that's the conversation for council about how do you want to handle that situation for those types of federally funded, personnel grants that we have in place when the funding dries up.
Okay. So I know we'll know more by the time of our next meeting, but I think it's really important for you to keep council informed along the way, you know, if there's something that we anticipate or something that we're experiencing. And if you could also send an email, electronic version of this report, that would be very helpful as well. Okay.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Allen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your leadership in making sure we had this in front of us tonight. I think this is very important. Director Craddy, can you speak to, I see that our American Rescue Plan funds aren't listed on here at all. Does this executive order have nothing to do with those grants that we've received from ARPA?
That is correct. So ARPA is handled different than these grants. These grants are reimbursement-based grants. ARPA, we receive the funds. We just don't articulate the revenue until we have the associated expense, but we have those funds. So there isn't funds for them to expend from that. So ARPA dollars will stay as they are.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Seer?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Director Craddy, thank you very much. Just a few questions for you. $32 million percentage. It is what percentage of our total budget for 2025?
The 32 million would be equivalent to about 15% of our total budget.
15%.
Yeah,
Tell me
15%.
about the 2024 budget. When will you finalize the 2024 budget?
We will have a tentative closeout by the end of February. The auditors are coming in kind of mid-March. We're working towards having a final draft of the audit to council by the end of June, but we will have mostly finalized numbers by the end of February.
So this order will not affect our 2024 budget, all your reports and our audit for 2024, would that?
Correct. Some of these dollars, depending on the cycle, may have been booked back to the previous year, but I don't think that's going to be material to kind of how we finish 2024.
So how many total dollars we have right now in all the accounts?
Total cash on hand
Correct, sir.
is about 185 million.
$185 million. And part of the $185 million as the emergency fund, part of that number.
Correct.
How much money we have in the emergency fund right now?
So in terms of our reserve levels in the general fund, we're sitting at about $42 million.
These emergency fund or our total cash on hand, if we run into some trouble, can they be reassigned to other accounts?
That's a council prerogative. The council can always choose to use any of our reserve dollars. Obviously, what it would impact is the multi-year plan we've laid out to offset some of our police and fire pension contributions over the next 3 years. So it would cause some impacts to how that's funded, but the use of reserve dollars is at council prerogative.
And last question, what is the timing? I don't know if you have an answer to this question. What is the timing of these dollars, this $32 million we're talking about tonight? Mm-hmm. What was the timing of the city of Peoria receiving those dollars in 2025?
It really depends on when these projects get completed, and some of these dollars may even flow into 2026, depending on when the projects are done. So really, a lot of these projects have quarterly reimbursement cycles, so we get some money in on all of these about once a quarter. It just really depends on the individual grant.
So worst case scenario, which I hope it does not happen, but we do have emergency fund and we do have cash on hand to do our job for 2025.
Correct.
Accurate statement?
Correct. And because of that fund balance, I think we also have the opportunity, as some of this works through, to float some of these expenditures. There's obviously just a risk associated with spending those dollars and the federal dollars not coming through.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Councilmember Grant?
What is the deadline to spend these dollars that could be taken from us?
That is specific to each grant. I would have to look at each grant to be able to give you a more defined answer, because they do fluctuate on each grant. Like I can tell you, for example, with the SAFER grant, those funds have to be expended by the end of this year for us to be able to articulate those as costs.
what is the possibility of our staff really working hard quickly to get these funds committed to the Peoria cause?
I would say within the current window that we're facing with the 1 week with the stay, I think it's unfortunately highly unlikely we'd be able to push a lot of these through. I think there's those expenditures we may have already have that we could push through, but getting additional work done in some of these areas I think would be difficult before the stay ends on Monday.
Of course, it wouldn't be convenient, but it could be done. Right? We could commit these funds if we wanted to do some, like when you were in college, you did some all-nighters. I'm serious.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're worried about a draconian impact on our city, maybe we need to step up the pace here and get these funds committed, just in case the worst case scenario happens.
Yeah. The one distinction I would say with these grants is for the reimbursement to occur, the funds have to be out the door. It's not a simple commitment. With ARPA, we have the requirements for commitments. With these, we have to have hard costs out to these vendors or individuals before we can request the reimbursement.
Just for those listening, SNAP is not affected. Medicare is not affected. Social Security is not affected. Student loans are not affected. Funds for small business, farmers, Pell Grants, Head Start, rental assistance, other similar programs are not affected. That's the good news. But let's take a look at this comprehensively. The bad news is we know compliments of our state government. We know for sure that we're going to have a $4 million hole punctured into our budget for 26. We know that for sure, don't we? So see, this is why those of us who work in city government have for many years feel almost as if we are puny players in a terrible play where the end result is a tragedy because of irresponsible actions on the part of the federal government, state government, whatever. That's why we're in the mess we're in now with the pensions. Money that should have been placed in a lockbox was not put there. And now we have to scrounge around to protect our constituents as much as we possibly can. But I'm happy to talk about the federal. But let's remember what we know is coming, and that's that $4 million hole thanks to our state government. And Mayor, I heard you say that Councilman Graham likes to speak poorly of our state lawmakers. I only speak poorly of state lawmakers or federal lawmakers if they're hurting our people. Because my first loyalty goes to our people, not to having a chumming relationship with some lawmaker who is hurting Peoria. Let's keep our eye on the ball and let's be objective. It's a funny thing, state lawmakers came up and said hello to me. I guess they didn't take it personally. They know I'm doing my job for the people of Peoria, and I am very glad, Mayor, that you brought this up tonight so that we all understand what the implications potentially are for our people in this city. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Director Craddy. Thank you, Mr. Manager.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
We are at citizens' opportunity to address the city council.
I have 2 cards that were submitted. The first is Mr. Andel Jowers.
Good evening. We had a gloriously beautiful day today, and it is because of the prayers of many people around Peoria that pray for good weather. And so don't take it for granted. We had a great winter. We've had the best weather than most people have had around the country. I like to say that we live in Goshen. I'm not here to criticize you, but I'm here to thank you. Proverbs 22:29 says, "Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. Do you see any truly competent workers? They will serve kings rather than working for ordinary people." I'm here to serve you guys. I'm here to serve you. My name is Andel Javon Jowers. I'm a minister, an assistant pastor, and I was a gospel recording artist that was signed to Sony under the name I Am Andel. I'm a Bradley grad student. I'm studying mental health counseling, and I graduate in 2026. I bring you greetings from my bishop, Joseph H. Johnson, who presided over juvenile court services and adult probation for years, as well as Star of Hope Full Gospel Church, now under the leadership of our new senior pastor, Vance Jordan. My new church will be starting at the 4 Points at Sheridan. This is my daughter, Glory Gwendolyn Jowers. She is also on a lot of my music as well. She's been recording with me since she was 3. And I just brought her up here so she can get familiar with what goes on with the city of Peoria. She wanted to know what you guys do. And so I told, this is where decisions are made. And so you could be mayor one day or you could be president. And I'm trying to make that impact, not just in her, but all the children around Peoria. Like I said, my new church will be starting at the 4 Points of Sheridan at 500 Hamilton, starting August 3rd, 2025 at 7 a.m. And that will be Sunday school, and then 8 a.m. service will be out by 9:15. I want to applaud you and commend you all for the wonderful job that you're doing to make Peoria a great place to live for all citizens. That you are all here for a specific purpose and plan of God. No one could do what you have been assigned to do. No one can be you like you can be you. And thank you for being you. You are great people in my eyes and to the citizens of Peoria. And then in these United States of America, then I want to admonish you to continue on making this city the greatest city in Illinois and in these United States of America and the world. We can do it. I believe that we are meant to impact the city of Peoria, and not just the city of Peoria, but the world. Let's lead or learn to lead this city and the world by your bright and shining examples, as well as mine. Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I look forward to serving each and every one of you individually, as well as this great city. I will continue to pray for you all that we win for all citizens. God bless you. Shalom.
Gary Newhouse. Mr. Newhouse.
Howdy, I'm Gary Newhouse. I don't know if you need my address. My wife and I live at 3705 North Grandview Drive in Peoria. I wanted to speak at tonight's meeting to publicly express my personal thanks and appreciation to the 6 council members who demonstrated courage and sound reasoning when they approved the ordinance prohibiting unauthorized camping on public property within the city of Peoria. I'll state my reasons for supporting their decision. Number 1, a frequent comment I hear from those who oppose the ordinance is, "So now being homeless is a crime." This assertion is silly, disingenuous, and I believe intentionally misleading. The ordinance makes it clear that being homeless does not confer a special right to appropriate a public space to the exclusion of other members of the public. If a person has no garage, i.e. a garageless person, would that confer upon her the right to park on the sidewalk, thus preventing other members of the public from walking on the sidewalk? If an ordinance prohibited parking on the sidewalk, would we hear people saying, "So now being garageless is a crime"? Number two, most information I am aware of about homeless people provides evidence that majority of the people camping on public property suffer from drug addiction or have mental health problems. These are people who need help with their problems. Allowing and enabling them to remain trapped in an unhealthy and dangerous lifestyle is not compassion. Ronald Reagan once said, "There is purpose and worth to each and every life." I believe allowing any lives to be squandered is not compassion. Those who oppose the ordinance expecting a smiley face emoji in the virtue column get the opposite from me. The ordinance may provide a needed nudge for those pursuing a homeless lifestyle to seek help if they have addiction or mental health problems. If more cities adopted this ordinance and caused the number of people seeking help to grow, it may provide the needed nudge for our state legislators to acknowledge that mental health and addiction are state-level problems that require comprehensive institutional state-level solutions. On a related topic, I feel everyone who can afford it and who is so inclined should donate to charities whose mission they support. I personally donate as much as I can afford to charities I support. If council members donate to charities helping the homeless, I applaud them. However, I feel spending $80,000 from the city treasury to provide temporary housing for homeless people was an example of cavalier, elitist virtue signaling using OPM, other people's money. Everyone in Peoria who directly or indirectly pays taxes has myriad personal problems that they deal with every day, and they deserve to make their own decisions about their charitable giving. As an aside, I am speaking as someone who was once a homeless person. It was many decades ago and was simply a lifestyle choice for me for a period of time. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Madam Clerk?
We do not have an executive session, so we're at adjournment.
Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Sears, seconded by Councilmember Gordon Young. Please cast your ballots. Thank you for your service.